Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. It's that time of year again when Australia's richest people are identified and ranked. I'm sure they love it. Well, some like it, some don't. But there's one thing they hate more, and that's falling off the list altogether. The list, Australia's Richest 250, has been released by The Australian today. And this year, there are a few new names and some fascinating stories to go with them. John Stensholt is the editor of the list. John, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Sean, a pleasure as always.
Am I allowed to ask, John, how many years in one form or another have you been doing this?
Oh, goodness me. You know, I was a researcher at the BRW back in about 2001 was probably the first list I worked on. That's, you can imagine how young I was then.
I'm surprised you were born. Fantastic. Okay, so tell us the list. Who are the top five this year?
Well, I don't think it's any surprise to see Gina Rinehart at number one, but she is worth $50 billion now.
Wow.
I don't think that's a pretty big number, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's on paper, but still, it's just shows you how the mining boom keeps going for her. So it's a huge number, biggest number ever, clearly.
Yeah. What about the 2, 3, 4, and 5?
So 2 and 3, we've got Nicola Forrest and Andrew Forrest together. So Nicola's on the list for the first time because her and Andrew have split up, so she has wealth in her own name these days. And so we put them together for now because they want to keep their wealth together. So $37 billion combined. So
Right.
That's 2 and 3. Number 4, we've got Anthony Pratt and his family, so $27 billion.
Right.
And number 5, Harry Triguboff, 91-year-old, still going strong, $26 billion, still building Sydney apartments mostly.
Now, John, one of the first times I ever worked with you, you took me to a lunch in Sydney with Harry Triguboff, and he loved you. You were great mates, and you and he just sort of laughed at each other, and I was totally flummoxed by the whole thing because he's quite a character, Harry Triguboff. Would you agree?
Oh, look, he's 91 and he's still charging around like he's, 30, 40 years younger. I mean, yeah, he's not the tallest guy, but when he puts the pace on, he's really like it's the energy though, isn't it? Really, that's the thing about people like him. Like he's 91, he's got no intention of ever retiring, and he's still got that energy and passion to keep running his business, and it's going better than ever. Like it's making more money, it's building more. If anything, he probably gets frustrated that he can't grow it quickly enough for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so what about the total wealth of the list? Has it gone up? Has it increased or decreased this year?
Yes, it's gone up a bit. I mean, it's about $590 billion now between the 250. So that's up about $30 billion or so from last year. Look, it's probably reflective of some of the big people like Gina going up and a couple of others. The cutoff actually goes up to $590 million this year. So, look, it's a lot of money. Some of it's obviously shared by people on the list, but when there's joint entries, husband and wives or business partners or whatever. But, look, it's a substantial amount of money, and it probably shows you what's happening in Australian business. That's the beauty of the list, I think. It gives you a whole lot of trends, which we can talk about if you like.
Yeah. So tell me, what are the sectors? Property traditionally has always had a big chunk of the very, very rich. Is that still the case?
It is still the case. Look, it's about if you get to about a quarter of the list, but what I like is that retail and technology, the next couple of cabs off the rank, so to speak, and some of that mixes together. So if you think about how companies sell these days, obviously a lot of e-commerce or retail that's promoted online. I mean, a couple of the younger guys that are on the list, the High Smiles duo, Alex Tomic and Nick Merkovic, and they're only 29 and 30, and it's toothpaste, right? But with flavors and colors, and they do so well promoting it online, effectively what is an old product. And so all of a sudden they're selling this amazing flavored toothpaste to places in America. It's in Walmart and Boots in the UK. So that also helps the younger guys take their companies overseas earlier. So it's almost being born global, some of these entrepreneurs.
Are there more younger people on the list than there used to be 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think there is. And technology plays a part. I mean, if you talk about Harry Triguboff, he was probably, took 20 years to really build that company. These days, if you've been in technology for 20 years, you're an absolute veteran. I mean, the High Smiles guys started 10 years ago, and that's actually a long time. There's other people who have started 5, 6, 7 years ago. They get that startup funding. I mean, Atlassian's been around for 20 years, but I mean, those guys are only in their early 40s, right? So Mike Cannon-Brooks and Scott Farquhar. So yeah, I think there's younger entrepreneurs. The internet's clearly helped. I mean, Harry is probably one of the few people at the top echelons of the list that just, cater for the domestic market only. Everyone else, or a lot of others, the world is their marketplace. There's no barriers in that way.
Stay with me, John. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is John Stensholt, editor of The List, Australia's Richest 250. What about the surprises on the list? Was there anyone that you, particularly up towards the top of the list, that you had a big jump that you were a bit surprised by?
Oh, there's a guy called Tim Heath who's based in Estonia. He's a cryptocurrency gambling magnate. He's only 45. He's worth just uncovered him 2.15 billion, and he's
Wow.
so he makes his money from the gambling. He runs a sports book. It's actually banned in Australia because the government doesn't allow people to gamble with crypto here. But he's also got about $1 billion worth of investments on the side. So he's a serial investor. Like he's got about 100 investments in startups and other venture capital sort of things. So I think for someone like that, they make their money pretty early and then they want to invest it and create this investment ecosystem, I suppose. I think someone like that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, okay. You have to tell us a little bit about putting it together. You have instructed me many years ago on how to help you and how to do it. Man, it is painstaking.
There's 250 people on the list and some of them go together. But yeah, it's taken quite a few months of work, and particularly I think while everyone's on their summer holidays, I feel like I'm just slaving away on this list all the time.
You are, John, you are.
But yeah, look, I mean, we try and speak to most people, on a background basis. Obviously, I know some that won't speak, but a lot of them do. And you will not believe the amount of, balance sheets or information and other sort of asset valuations that I'll be sent. I mean, I remember, one year someone actually got an investment bank to value their company for them just for the purposes of sending it to me for the list.
Wow.
I mean, that would have cost, I don't know, thousands of dollars, I'm sure. There's other sorts of examples like that. So yeah, you're right. I mean, people don't want to necessarily be on the list. I think they tolerate it and they probably don't want to be off it once they're on it.
But sure, once you've been doing it for so long, no disrespect, of course, John, people probably expect their call, sort of February, March, John Stensholt's going to give me a ring at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't, then they'll let you know. I mean, which obviously we try and do, but a few that I have to remind that, yes, I did call you in January and I don't know, maybe they were on their yacht or something like that and they missed the call, but I do try. And absolutely, yeah, there is a perennial thing now, I suppose, that, oh yeah, here we go again, it's just something to deal with, or they'll get, someone from their company or an underling or something like that to take that call and have that negotiation, so to speak. But yeah, there's a lot of information that gets exchanged in the background that, obviously the journalist you have to treat, on a confidential basis, and that's what we do.
I always remember when the list comes out talking to rich listers and saying the problem with it not being correct is that the tax office and others look at it and they kind of cross-reference it. So in a sense, there's an incentive for the rich listers who you're talking to make sure it's reasonably correct.
I think there's a bit of there's several that say, oh, look, if you're going to do it, you may as well get it right, so to speak. You may as well, we want other people to know, what it is. It helps either their businesses or, you're right, that relationship with the tax office. Now, people say, oh, you must talk to the tax office all the time. Well, I don't think the tax office operate that way, but there's always those tales, isn't there, of, we sell a lot of copies that are near, the ATO headquarters or something like that, I suspect. So,
yeah.
And yes, you're right. But then again, if you're wealthy enough to be on this list, you're probably wealthy enough to get some accountants to deal with the ATO too.
That's very true. What about many people whose wealth dropped severely during the year?
Look, I think you'll find companies that have been in industries that are struggling a bit more, like construction, for example, right? It's been, very well newsworthy about how construction companies have maybe getting a lot of revenue, but very, very hard to make profits. So you get companies, like Hutchinson's in Queensland that fall off the list just because it's hard going out there for a company like that. So that's the beauty of the list. I think it sort of encapsulates what's going on in business. You'll see the ups and downs of what's happening on the ASX or others, of companies that, share prices plunge. I mean, Worley's down, so John Grill's off the list, for example. There's other examples that really, just shows you what issues there are what fractures there are in business or the economy, where maybe the trends are going upwards as well. It can be a bit of a leading indicator and also a lag indicator too.
So, John, you're not allowed to answer Harry Triguboff to this question. You've been doing it a long time. Do you have someone or a couple of people that you just really enjoy working with during this process? Because I'm sure they enjoy it.
There's a couple of, I always like finding the new people. There's a couple of guys out in Sydney, Jason and Elvis Bay, who are just a couple of mid-30s, mid to late 30 guys. They own Sydney Tools, which is just like, you think about it, it's a bit of an old-fashioned retail business, but they make, $800 million revenue, $60 million profits, just good, down-to-earth blokes just having a crack. And they're just doing an amazing job. And, they just keep expanding. But also like running the business well as well. And there's a lot of discipline behind it, but they're self-made. They started. Their parents were tool repairers, and they thought, well, we don't want to repair tools. Let's sell them, and here we are.
John, congratulations on the list, and thank you very much for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean.
That was business journalist John Stensholt, editor of The List, Australia's Richest 250, out now in the Australian newspaper. This is the Fear and Greed business interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.